Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to um the channel. My name is Synergetic Games. Um we are going to be doing community story time. Thank you guys so much for all the resubs. Not 10 months is unbelievable. Thank you so much. And also Gray Area. Thank you again for your support. And ooh, nope. Oh, Starbreeze, thank you for the 5 months as well. Um, That's incredible, you guys. Thank you so much. I do appreciate it. I've had such a rough time, and you've probably been sitting on those notifications for like a week or something, maybe even more. But I do appreciate it. Thank you so much. Now, I do have some. You gifted Starbreeze one hoping it would start the choo-choo train. Aww. Hey! The choo-choo train is really close though. It could almost be here. I don't know. See if you can do an emote pyramid. Maybe that'll help. I think that triggers it too. But I could be wrong. I don't know. I'm not an expert on the hype trains. But thank you so much for the gift sub. I do appreciate that, and I'm sure Starbreeze does as well. Needs 3 individuals. Huh. Does it count if I do it? Let's see. Why don't we do... God, I don't know. Where are my emotes? Here I am. Nice. Let's do some hearts. We'll try and do an emote pyramid for the hearts. If we can. Oh God, I don't know what how do people even emote anymore? There's just such a massive list of them all the time everywhere. Ooh, that is a good choice. Good choice. Here, for God's sake, you would think this would be easier because it's so cute. I love it. It's great. But so for serious guys, I'll let you guys work out a pyramid to make. It's always fun. Okay, shall we do the love froggy? The love froggy. We'll pick that one and we'll make a pyramid, and it's gonna be great. It's gonna be great, guys. We'll figure it out. But yeah, as you guys know, I sort of rage quit Ori and the Blind Forest, and I'm sort of taking this opportunity to this is in part of the announcements that I demanded that I would give you, by the way. We're having a serious discussion. Hey! Love it. Thank you. That's an excellent pyramid. But so I rage quit Friday, and I meant to tell you this on Monday, but there was never a good opportunity. So for the time being, I'm having to rearrange the timetable anyway, because my brother lives nearby and he's taken to visiting on specific days, and he keeps visiting on days he knows I'm streaming. But that's just because those are the days that he has off. So he visits on those days. And now that we've lost Friday, it's a good opportunity to rearrange some things. So, such a bully. How dare he spend time with his family? So he's going to be on the streams. Absolutely not. No, I think he's a bit camera shy. But like I'm thinking of taking Tuesdays and Wednesdays off to accommodate for that. I might. You might if you really, really want to. Thinking of taking Tuesdays and Wednesdays off and moving story time to Thursday. Storytime Thursday. There's still a little bit of alliteration there. I would have liked to call it Storytime Tuesday because I feel like that sounds just slightly better. But I'm also thinking I think it's a little bit awkward in the just like kind of really late at night on a Saturday after doing literally nothing all day, that it's like I do nothing with my Saturdays if I can help it, like literally nothing. But it's strange. It's a little bit, awkward for it to be in the middle of the evening. So if I can adjust things that I can have Saturday off as well, just I would like a blank day. Then I will do that. Fridays, we talked about this a while ago, about maybe turning Fridays into like a movie night or something if there's no particular games that we want to play. It might not be like a constant thing. We probably won't do it every week because I feel like we might even get bored of that. That is the correct amount of things to do on a Saturday. I agree with you. But yeah, so those are my current plans. I'm gonna have to rejig a few things because I'm actually looking at my brother's rota for his work just now, and it's set several weeks in advance. Mondays, yeah, it looks like it's set at least 3 or 4 weeks in advance. If those days off change, that's a him problem, which may also become a me problem. I'm getting really frustrated with having to constantly... I don't like stopping and starting the streams, basically. Like, I want a constant schedule for both my benefit and yours, and it's really annoying. It annoys me personally when I have to turn around and cancel streams because unplanned things keep happening to me. And like, you sure did, Chopper. Hi, welcome to the stream. We're trying to start a hype train. It was almost here, but it kind of diverted. The hype train is gone. But anyway, it annoys me, and I like most of this week though has been completely my fault because I had a migraine like the entire week, and it just would not friggin' go away until today, pretty much. Like, I felt a bit better yesterday, but it was one of those mildly achy things that it was just kind of... I would rather have spent Friday recovering than coming on the stream like I sort of vaguely threatened that I would. So there's always that. But Mrs. Chopper gets migraines, so I understand you can't stream. But yeah, migraines are hard. They are hard, okay? They're hard. No, also, during the week when I wasn't streaming, I did get a follow from Foxy Aussie, I think. 21. I think just Foxy Aussie. I'm gonna write it down, and then you guys can tell me how to say it, because I am that one. Anyway, thank you for the follow. I'm inclined to believe it's not a bot because it did follow me when I wasn't even streaming, so there's that. I'm also vaguely familiar with the name. I don't know if they've come on the channel before or not, or if... I don't know. You're saying Foxy. It's pronounced Keith. Okay, I'll remember that for the future. But yes, I'm gonna try and keep the schedule more regular than usual with the updates. I don't want to keep changing it. So I'm gonna try and keep it so it's Tuesdays and Wednesdays off, which means we're gonna have to rejig a few things. So we'll probably, obviously, we'll keep Final Fantasy on the Monday. Give me a moment. On Thursday will probably be what's it, Majigga? Doing so great. What's it, Majigga? Subnautica, that's the one. And Fridays, I think, is going to be an amnesia day, which means this. Am I missing a day? Tuesdays and Wednesdays. That's. I might have to still stream on Saturdays, but yeah. Anyway, we'll figure it out. Sounds like every day is an amnesia day. Well, yeah. But, you know, I'm surprised that I haven't, lost my entire brain. I'm pretty sure people say that sort of things, like, oh, if it were up to me, I'd have dropped my brain somewhere ages ago. But to be fair to me, I probably would have. I lost my glasses the other day, and it took me like half an hour to find them. And they weren't on my they definitely weren't on my face. I checked, like actively checked, because I've done that before. And I looked everywhere they would be, and everywhere they wouldn't be, and it turns out they were just in my shirt like this. And I was just carrying them around with me the entire time, and I just could not find them for the life of me. So yeah, that's where I'm at. And I'm sorry for that, but I can whenever it comes to Subnautica, I don't know why, but it does not roll off the tongue or my memory. It's like I always forget something, and it's Subnautica or it's amnesia, ironically. So life sucks, but we still deal with it. Indeed. But anyway, having discussed this schedule, I've just discovered that I cannot have Saturdays off with this new plan, because the third day off that I would have goes to Sunday, which I'm busy on, so I don't stream anyway. This is unfortunate, but not wholly bad. I guess it's nice to be able to have, like, I call my days off bonding days that I spend with my family, because why not? It would be nice to have a day to myself where I'm not entertaining my brother who's visiting. I mean, he might not always visit because, things happen, but it's just, life is hard. It's fine. I don't mind. I'll probably end up doing my own thing during the day a majority of the time anyway. Sorry, I'm just so tired. My sister has been stressing me out with higher levels of crazy than usual. That sounds really mean, and I probably shouldn't have said that out loud. No, she's very into her conspiracy theories, and I find it stressful. And because, I don't know, every other subject is a conspiracy and alternative news, which may or may not be more accurate than mainstream news. Use that stress to read. Indeed, I will do that. Sorry, I think I've gone on long enough. I don't think there's anything else just now, but be an angry Harry. I will. I didn't visit my sister at Christmas because one of those was going to be there. It's the first time in 10 years I didn't go. What do you mean, one of those? Oh, oh! I think I know what you mean. Never mind. Let's just be subtle. So I think I'm gonna do some rejigging. I'll let you know what the new timetable is probably tomorrow morning on Discord, and I will change it on Twitch as well for those of you who aren't members of the Discord channel. Okay, so also, whatever game we finish next, we are going to be playing Monkey Island as promised. After that, I'm going to introduce you guys to Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney. I've got that going for me. It's my comfort game. I'm showing you. Where are you from, boy? Leave me alone. Okay, so look, we are on chapter 17 actually, which I think there's only like 23 chapters, so I don't think there's that much left to go. We might finish it. I'm like going through the chapters and it doesn't seem like there's that many pages left. But we'll see how it goes, because it might be worth finishing tonight. And then I'll dig through my bookcase, or we'll do a vote. I will pick books. We can do a vote, and we will decide it during the course of the week, I suppose, because I don't know. I'll do a poll every session, and so you guys can. I'll do a poll in the chat. I'll do a poll in the chat at some point during the stream, and if you would like to cast your vote, please do. But I'll be doing it all week, essentially. So if you miss one stream, there will be an opportunity in another one. And even if you miss the poll, just drop it in there if you plan on lurking, and I'll give you the options if you miss the poll particularly. Anyway, so we'll get to reading. Okay, chapter 17. Harry was awakened by the rattling of a cup and saucer outside his bedroom door. It was a really terrible rattling, as if Mr. M was shaking himself to pieces. Then there was a long, long pause, and that same terrible silence. When Harry felt he couldn't really take any more, he almost called out. The door opened. Mr. M stood there, fully clad. He had the cup and saucer in one hand, and a bundle of clothes under his other arm. That much Harry saw through the lashes of his near closed eyes, for he felt it was wiser to pretend to still be asleep. To be still asleep. Mr. M stood looking at Harry a very long time. At first, a slow smile crept across his face. Then, slowly, it faded. Mr. M's face grew sadder and sadder, until Harry almost cried out again, just to stop it getting worse. At that point, Mr. M crossed the room on tiptoe, put the rattling cup of tea on the bedside table, and draped the clothes over a chair. There were corduroy trousers, a check shirt, vest and underpants and socks, and last, a blue jumper. Mr. M arranged the clothes with little tugs, and then rearranged them again. Satisfied, he tiptoed to the door, and looked at Harry's face again, with a stare so intense that Harry felt he was being eaten, alive. Then, he made a dash for Harry's old clothes, where he had dropped them carelessly on the floor. He snatched them up avidly and vanished from the room, calling as he went. Suddenly, "Wakey, wakey, rise and shine!" Feeling rather shaky himself, Harry swung his legs down to the floor and drank the cup of tea. It had 3 sugars in. When he whipped out to the loo, there was the smell of frying bacon coming upstairs, so he thought he'd better get washed and dressed quickly. Mr. M seemed to have finished his breakfast. He was stuck behind the morning's Times. He said shortly, "Your breakfast's in the oven." It was bacon and eggs again, but Harry hadn't grumbled. But Harry wasn't grumbling. Sorry. That was weird. After what he'd been through, he could eat bacon and eggs like that forever. Even mopped up the greasy plate with bread. "There's toast there," said Mr. M in a tight voice. Harry munched his way through a lot of toast and marmalade. Then he felt guilty again because of the rationing. "Is it all right if I finish it up?" Mr. M's face appeared fleetingly. He smiled as if he was really pleased. "I like a boy who eats a good breakfast," he said. "You need feeding up." Then his face vanished again. Harry stared at the large headlines of the paper. There had been a victory in the Western Desert at a place called Alam Halfa. Field Marshal Montgomery seemed to have destroyed a lot of Rommel's tanks. "Monty's given Rommel what for, then," said Harry. Mr. M's hand tightened on the paper. "I never discussed the war," he said in a very small voice. Then he seemed to relent and lowered the paper and said, "We'd better go down and see how your dog's getting on." The car rattled and creaked along, and Mr. M rattled on non-stop about what a marvelous vet Mr. Harper was. How animals loved him, how cats twined around him. Or twined, sorry, twined is probably... How cats twined around him, purring, even when he was giving them injections. So it was a bit of an anticlimax to find, when they arrived, that Mr. Harper was out on his rounds. They were shown into the back area by a bad-tempered woman in an overall, who seemed to regard them as a nuisance. Don was in a pen, on a bed of old blankets. He seemed sleepy and didn't get up, though his tail beat against the floor. Both went in and stroked him. Harry thought again how good Mr. M was with animals, and how bad he was with people. "He's all right," said Mr. M, still stroking Don. "He's just sleepy after the anesthetic." Don's paw was tightly and neatly bandaged, but Harry was a bit worried that there was a little blood seeping through the bandage. "It's all right," said Mr. M. "Harper knows what he's doing." Then they were back in the car, with the silence growing between them, and the whole empty sunny day stretching ahead with nothing to do. Harry thought hard. He was getting increasingly nervous about what Mr. M wanted him for. All adults wanted something. Joseph had wanted help with the beach combing. The old lady had wanted to, well, Artie had wanted things fetched from the naffy. "Can I help?" he said, diffidently, not looking at Mr. M, just staring through the windscreen at the little silver dial on the bonnet. "Help?" said Mr. M, he sounded most surprised. "Help with what?" "I could do the washing up," said Harry. "I helped my man with the washing up. I didn't break anything." "Bless the boy," said Mr. M to nobody in particular. "Yes, you can do the washing up if you like." "And I can help you with the farm. With the animals?" "It's not a farm," said Mr. M. "I've only got 4 acres. Goats, hens, geese. But you can help if you like." He seemed happier. He rattled on in great detail about goats, hens, and geese all the way home. It was as if Harry had opened the floodgates. Mr. M was right. It wasn't a farm. It was more like a zoo. There were 3 she-goats, and Harry had a go at milking Emily, the quiet one. There was also a very nasty billy goat who spent all his time getting behind your back so he could butt you. "He hasn't got a very nice nature," said Mr. M. "But he was born here, and I couldn't bear to send him to market. He got a right to live like anything else. I'm against death." He said it as if death was a person, to be outwitted. And he was so against death that he spent 10 minutes in the hen-cree with a jam jar trying to catch a wasp so that he could put it safely out of the door. "I just swat wasps, Harry, but I'd never swat a bee." He remembered spending 10 minutes rescuing a bee in their kitchen at home with a jam jar, just the same way. "Never kill anything you can't create," said Mr. M. "Who gave you the power of life and death?" "What about germs?" asked Harry. Mr. M was silent for a long time after that, and Harry wasn't sorry he'd been so smart, Alec. And Harry was... Oh, he was sorry. Never mind. But it was a happy day on the whole, because they worked side by side, never looking at each other in the face. Mr. M never looked at people in the face, but he talked non-stop to make up. Harry could see that he really was a teacher, and he had given all the animals names. Not just the 4 cats, but every goose and every hen. He knew everything about them. That hen hurt her leg one night when I left her out of the cree by mistake. She can stand on 2 legs, but she only hops on 1. That black cat is the black and white one's kitten. He never left home. She still washes him every night, though he's twice her size. But she gets fed up with him sometimes, and bites him on the neck when he's lying asleep. It was as if it was a kingdom of animals, and Mr. M was the king. On the 3rd morning, Harry, coming downstairs, heard a woman's voice in the kitchen. His hand was on the kitchen door handle. When he heard the woman's voice say shrilly, "You can't do that, Mr. Murgatroyd. It's not right. It's downright wicked." Mr. M's voice was too low to make out what he said in reply. "He must have a mother and a father somewhere. We must be worried sick about him," said the woman. Harry stayed frozen, silent. They were talking about him. Mr. M's voice murmured. The woman's voice rose higher. "You know what happened the last time? The police warned you. You could have lost your job. You could have gone to prison." Murmur, murmur. "I'll not stay in a house with such wickedness. I'm giving my notice. I'll not be party to it." There were the sounds of movements. Just in time, Harry fled back upstairs. From the top of the stairs, he watched the woman storm out, buttoning up her coat. Timidly, he went downstairs again. Mr. M sat with his head in his hands, unmoving. Harry just stood, watching. He seemed to watch forever. He had never seen anyone sit like that. In the end, he said timidly, "Are you all right?" Mr. M looked up, as if he did not know where he was. He was holding a photograph in a frame. Silently, he held it out to Harry. It was a photograph of a boy laughing, a boy a bit older than Harry. "Oh, sorry. I will do the word ban. I apologize. I just caught it now." But he was wearing a checkered shirt, a blue pullover, and corduroy trousers. The clothes Henry was wearing now. Henry looked up. Mr. M had his head in his hands again. "Who was he?" asked Henry, but he knew. The boy looked so much like Mr. Murgatroyd. He was fourth top. He was fourth top of in his year at Dartmouth. He nearly won the Sword of Honor. He was only 18. 18, 5 months and 4 days. He was a midshipman, George Friedrich Murgatroyd. His friends called him Freddie. He was on the Repulse. You know what happened to the Repulse? I remember, said Henry. Oh, I've just changed his name. How do you like that? You never even reached their target. They never even reached their target. Sheer waste. Sheer bloody waste. Then, tight-lipped, he took the photo off Henry and put it back in the cupboard and locked the door. Must go and see to the hens. What did you need? Oh, pardon me. What did you nearly get put in prison for? Harry didn't think it was the right time to ask. Oops. Sorry, Henry, my bad. We still need to think of a good forfeit for that. Change it to Chopper, okay. Chopper didn't think it was the right time to ask, but he had to know. Mr. Murgatroyd sat down. There was a boy I was fond of him. He came here often. He was miserable at home. His father hit him a lot. One night he came to me. He was all bleeding. He said he wouldn't go home anymore. I said he could stay here. His father came for him. I threw the drunken sot out of my house. Yes, said Chopper feelingly. Yes. The parents came back with a policeman. They accused me of enticing the boy, trying to steal their son. I had to let them have him. I could have lost my job. I could have gone to prison. It's a crime, you see, enticement. Yes, said Chopper. And when we read Harry Potter, you can call Harry Abnock. Maybe I will. Oh God, where was I? Why did they want him? Said Mr. M. If they hated him so much, don't they realize how precious sons are? He said it softly, but it was like a scream. Chopper took a deep breath and said, My parents are dead. They were killed in the bombing. I haven't got nobody. It's no good, said Mr. M. That woman, Mrs. Cleeve, my cleaning lady, she'll gossip. I'll be the talk of the village. Somebody will tell the police. Villagers are like that. Couldn't you talk to her? She wouldn't listen to me. Harry got up. Perhaps she'll listen to me. Where does she live? Mr. M told him in a low voice, then put his head back in his hands. He seemed to be beyond caring. I'm dead when I see my own pod. Harry knocked on Mrs. Cleeve's front door and waited. He knocked again, but there was still no answer. But he wasn't in any mood to go away. So he barged round the back and found Mrs. Cleeves hanging out washing, her mouth full of clothes pegs. They stared at each other. Harry thought Mrs. Cleeves didn't have an unkind face, just a worried one, and, like Ma'am, worry would make her hasty. She would do things in a rush and be sorry after. Mrs. Cleeve needed slowing down. Please, said Harry. Can I have a drink of water? I feel faint. Mrs. Cleeve bustled into the kitchen and sat him in a chair, and made him put his head between his knees. Harry didn't mind. She wouldn't just chuck him out of her kitchen, like she might have chucked him out of her garden. After a little while, he said he'd stop feeling faint. Pleased with herself, Mrs. Cleeve said, I'll give you something better than water, and went and brought a and went and brought a glass of homemade lemon barley. Harry sipped it slowly, playing for time, waiting for Mrs. Cleeve to finally get out of her flap and start to feel nosy. His dad had always said that all women were nosy. Bit rude, but I can be nosy, so I can get partially behind that, at least. Finally, he said, "This is lovely. Just like my mum used to make." Used to? Mrs. Cleves was onto that like a flash. "My mum's dead," said Harry, watching the look on Mrs. Cleve's face change. He was no longer in any danger of being thought an impudent young pup, or a damned young nuisance. He was now in Mrs. Cleve's mind, that poor wee bairn. A big nose does not nosy make. I think that's just how I'm going to phrase that, hopefully correctly. Speaking of noses, I've got an itchy one. I apologise. Your mum can't have been any great age, said Mrs. Cleeve cautiously. "She was killed in the bombing on Tyneside? Tyneside. I'm going to call it Tyneside. 2 months ago. Careful, don't rush her. So you and your dad will be managing on your own. Your dad was killed too, by the same bomb." And while Mrs. Cleeve's face crumpled up with horror, he added, "And me little sister." Was it terrible to use their memories like this? But you had to survive. Mom and Dad would have wanted him to survive. "How did you escape?" asked Mrs. Cleeve, a tinge of suspicion in her voice. "We was down in the shelter. Mum and me and me dog. We always went down first to get things ready." "Haven't you got nobody? Just the dog?" He wasn't going to mention Cousin Elsie. Cousin Elsie would be a very bad mistake. Mr. Murgatroyd was very kind when the dog hurt his foot. He took him to the vet's. He's still there till his foot gets better. "How have you managed?" Oh, there's a typo. Sorry, I found a typo. So her name is Mrs. Cleeve, right? But it's been typoed. I don't think you guys will be able to see it, but she's Mrs. Clever now. That's what she is. Mrs. Cleeve was really hooked now. Her eyes were wide as saucers, her mouth slightly parted. "Sleeping rough till Mr. Murgatroyd found me. He's very kind." "He's too kind for his own good," said Mrs. Cleeve, her voice softening. "He's never been the same since that lad of his was killed off in Malaya." "What happened to him?" Harry asked innocently, and Mrs. Cleeve was off. Mr. Murgatroyd's long sufferings, the death of his wife 5 years ago, bringing up the boy on his own, the boy's death, the other boy, the trouble with the police, and all the time Mrs. Cleeve's voice got softer, and several times she paused to wipe her eyes on her flowery pinafore. Harry did nothing but sigh and look incredulous. For hours and hours, in the end she stopped. Now was the crucial time. The idea must come from Mrs. Cleeve. "I must be going," said Harry. "Thank you so much for the nice lemonade." He got up. "Going? Going where?" said Mrs. Cleeve. "Back on the road. I mustn't get Mr. Murgatroyd into any more trouble." "But how will you manage?" "I'll manage. I managed before." "But you're only a bairn. There should be people looking after you." "They put me in a home," said Harry. "They put me dog to sleep, and the dog's the only thing I've got left. Goodbye. Thank you for the lemonade." Mrs. Cleeve looked bewildered. She passed a hand across her face. Ugh, it doesn't bear thinking about, little bits of burns. Here, sit down while I put my thinking cap on. I'll make you a cup of tea. And there's some seedy cake left. Have some tea while I gather me wits. Harry sat and let himself be fed while Mrs. Cleeve bustled about saying things like, I don't know what the world's coming to, and Hitler and his bloody Germans. Finally, she announced, We'll have to go and talk to Mr. Murgatroyd. Hang on a minute while I put on my coat and hat. On Hitman, they called me a nuisance for shooting someone. Oh dear. What a thing to... If you're a hitman, you saw a witness and you're like, bloody nuisance, how dare you? Clean that up. Unbloody believable. Harry waited and was content to wait. Mrs. Cleeve was in the conspiracy now, up to her neck. Well, said Mr. M when Mrs. Cleeve finally left. We've got our marching orders then. I gather you're spending your summer holidays with me, because I'm your uncle, and I'm helping you get over being an orphan. You might be coming to live with me permanently. His eyes roved over Harry's face. What did you say to her? I've got her eaten out of your hand. Who taught you how to handle women? I lived with me mum for 12 years. She's just like me mum. I don't know what my accent's doing. Sometimes Harry's super well spoken and sometimes he just isn't. Mr. M threw his head back and laughed. It wasn't the first time Harry had ever heard him laugh. It wasn't to be the last. The best day was the day they climbed Hedgehope. They went on the bus, a little battered, muddy country bus that groaned and rattled and squeaked its way around tight bends, with a conductor who seemed to know everybody by name and asked about all their friends and relations. A conductor who received parcels from people who weren't even travelling on the bus and gave out the parcels to others who were eagerly awaiting at bus stops. Silly little parcels like half a dozen eggs in a bag or a bundle of rhubarb. And he didn't charge them anything, just doing it out of the goodness of his heart. Mr. M said, just doing it out of the goodness of his heart, Mr. M said. And one old man got on with a live hen tucked under his arm, a hen that watched Harry with its sharp yellow eye, and peeking at the old man's serge sleeve with the sharp yellow bill. Another man had a well-grown lamb that bleated all the way, and left droppings in the aisle, and everybody called to each other down the aisle like one big happy family. After that, Hedgehope seemed very silent. There was some invisible birds calling from out of the sun-warmed heather that Mr. M said were curlews. As they climbed higher and higher, the country of Northumberland spread out wider and wider around them, deep round valleys and straggles of tiny grey houses. Mr. M said Hedgehope was the second highest mountain in Northumberland, and that the highest, over there, was Cheviot itself. Why didn't we climb that? Asked Harry. No view from the top, said Mr. M. Just a great flat top muddy old pudding. Hedgehope gave views all the way up. When they reached the cairn at the top, Mr. M pointed out Lindisfarne lying like a crumpled lady's handkerchief on the sea, and the ferns and Penshaw Monument and in County Durham, and the mountains of the Lake District, a misty tinge far to the west. Oh my god, I don't know why my reading has suddenly just plummeted, but we're gonna do it. We're gonna do it. I promise I'm gonna suck less from like this point on. I need some tea. It's like you can see the whole world, said Harry. Oh, there are far better views from the top of the scaffold. You can see the Isle of Man and the Irish coast, and from Mont Blanc. Have you climbed Mont Blanc? Many years ago, as a young man. I'd like to do it again before I'm too old, if the war doesn't drag on forever. Who's treating you like a tree? Oh, Mrs. Chopper. What? Does she have an axe? Are you okay? Do you want us to call somebody? I'd like to climb Mont Blanc. Is it very difficult? Cold? Does the snow on top lie all the year round? You could manage it if you got in the training for it. If we got you in training for it, that minute might really happen someday. The world seemed to open up. At Harry's feet. Not just the view from Hedgehope, but the view from every mountain in the world. Life seemed suddenly to go on forever and ever, and it was marvelous. Life with Mr. M suddenly joined up with life as it had been before the last bomb. The things in between, the burning bricks of home, Mam, Dad, Dulcie, suddenly seemed incredibly small. Life would go on now. He knew it. As more than being hungry and soaking wet, as more than fighting angry farmers in the sea, life relaxed, full of good things, as it used to be. When you could take it as it came, except that Mum and Dad and Dulcie wouldn't be there to see it. They must be in some hole in the ground by now, if they'd found anything of them at all. They were so far away now, so small. He suddenly found himself just standing, crying there. Mr. M didn't make a fuss or tell him to cheer up and stop it. Mr. M just gently turned away and let him cry in private, except Mr. M's shoulders were gently shaking. Was Mr. M crying too? That made it easier somehow. Nothing to be ashamed of. When it was all over, Mr. M led the way without a word. Down the southern slopes of Hedgehope, there was more grass between the clumps of heather and bracken, and the air was stiller and warmer out of the wind. It got quite hot descending, and there were lots of big fat flies trying to drink your sweat. Ugh. It is not a nice image. Okay. So Harry was glad when they came to the craggy hollow, where the little stream they'd been following became a waterfall into a pool of colourful dark slate amidst slopes of velvet green grass. Oh, I could just do with a swim, said Harry. Thought you might, said Mr. M, reaching into his big rucksack with a smile, and produced an old towel and dark blue bathing trunks. There's a place to change behind those rocks. Harry took the towels and trunks and went behind the rocks. Somehow he knew the towel and the trunks had been here before. Someone else had changed here. Someone else had bathed. When Mr. M watched him jump in and splashing, he would really be seeing someone else. He knew what Mr. M wanted him for, to fill up a boy-sized hole inside himself. That was okay. That Harry felt able to do. It was no more than he'd done for Artie. The only difference was that he'd always known Artie would go away someday, and he had the sudden, breathtaking idea that Mr. M wasn't going away anywhere, ever. He jumped and splashed a lot, even after he'd had enough. Mr. M must get his money's worth too. When he finally did come out, shivering and goose-fleshed, because the mountain water was pretty cold, Mr. M was busy pumping up an old brass Primus stove, on which a billy can of water was boiling. "Tea," said Mr. M. "Nothing like a mug of hot tea after a swim. And cake, plenty of cake." Afterwards they sat side by side, watching the fall of the water. A little breeze had got up that blew the thin stream to one side, so it wavered like smoke, never the same. "Do you know what shepherds do with orphan lambs in these hills?" asked Mr. M. "No," said Harry abruptly. He hoped it wasn't something horrible. That would spoil the wonderful day. "They find a ewe." "An ewe, as in the female sheep, whose lamb has died. And they take the skin of the dead lamb and tie it around the living lamb, and put it to the ewe. And the ewe smells the smell of her dead lamb and takes the living lamb inside the skin. It works. It really does." "I'm glad," said Harry. "It's nature. It sounds brutal, but it works. You get one happy ewe and one happy lamb." Sorry, ewe. You really have to emphasize the E and the W in that. Otherwise it's just like, ew. "Yeah," said Harry. There seemed no need to say any more. Chapter 18. That was a nice chapter. I liked that one. That was good. I'm sorry, I've got an itchy arm. Chapter 18. I wouldn't have liked to live with St. Cuthbert, said Mr. Montgomery. He only changed his boots once a year. The other monks had to drag the old ones off him. And he used to wander about all night praying so that the other monks couldn't get any sleep. They must have been quite glad when he went off to the inner phone. That's not what they taught us at school, said Harry, leaning his elbows on the wall next to Mr. M's. Just touching, in a companionable sort of way. They only taught us he was holy and converted the heathen. Schools, said Mr. M. I sometimes think all schoolmasters should be stood up against a wall and shot. They never teach boys anything interesting or anything they really want to know. Too right, said Harry. That was what the Australian airman said, who was billeted in Whitley Way. It sounded slick and tough and grown up. He watched Don foraging through the long grass below the outer wall of Lindisfarne Priory. Don's fine now. Paw healed up wonderfully. He's a fine vet, is Mr. Arthur. Harry put his mind out of gear and watched the sunset as the virtues of Mr. Harper were extolled once again. Mr. M couldn't half go on. Must be being a schoolmaster. Sorry. But there were far worse things than going on. At least the awful silences were gone. Silences were comfy now, though rare, and Mr. M could look him in the face at last, even when he talked about his son, or Harry talked about his mum and dad. Mr. M said that crying was good for you, even for men. And he's right. But he had never cried again, and neither had Harry. But they'd watched birds and walked along the beaches and gone sea fishing once all night, and come home with a great catch of flatfish and fried some for breakfast. And Mrs. Cleve was as pleased as Punch with both of them. She said Harry was filling out, and Mr. M looked 10 years younger. Mr. M said she was like a mother hen with 2 chicks. 1 week of the holidays left, said Mr. M suddenly. Yeah, said Harry smugly. We can go sea fishing again. I don't mean that. I mean I'll have to get back to work, and you'll have to get to school. What school were you at? The high school, said Harry automatically, but the blue sky seemed to darken. The glitter go off the water between them and the mainland. I can't go back there. No, said Mr. M reassuringly. But if you went to the high school there, you can go to the high school here, the Duke School, at Allenwick, where I teach. Wouldn't mind that, I suppose. Very gracious of you. We'll have to get you a uniform, but you'll be entitled to extra clothing coupons, being bombed out. I got some coupons in my attaché case, said Harry quickly. Mum was careful. She had a lot left. Yes, but, said Mr. M, we can't go on living from hand to mouth, you know. We can't go on pretending you're my nephew forever. People have to be informed. Everything's got to be regular and above board. He suddenly sounded very schoolmasterish. We must do things properly. We can't go on like this. I don't want to go back, said Harry. Going back will ruin everything. Who cares? Your cousin Elsie. Harry shuddered. She won't want me. She's got 6 kids of her own, and they live in 2 rooms in Back Branham Street. It's a slum. My mum and dad couldn't stand her. But she'll still make trouble. But it wasn't just Cousin Elsie. It was everything. He turned his back on North Shields forever. You didn't climb all the way up a mountain just to chuck yourself off the top and fall all the way back down again. That's enough, Harry, Mr. M spoke quite sharply. We are going back to North Shields tomorrow, and we're going to set things straight. Then we come back here and make a fresh start. It won't take more than a few hours, for goodness sake. God, thought Harry bitterly. Grown-ups. You tell lies for them, you find them flat on the floor and pick them up and make them happy again. And then they start getting bossy. He had a wild thought about getting his stuff together again and sneaking off with Don in the middle of the night. But life was no good without your own person. He'd never find another person as kind as Mr. M, and he was tired of the road. All right, he said, but you'll be sorry. He never spoke a truer word. Chapter 19. Come on, said Mr. M briskly. We can't hang about all day. I've got the car started. She's going a treat. Don's in the back already. He can't wait to get moving. Harry got up wearily and said goodbye to the kitchen, with its big hanging oil lamp and twin rocking chairs, each side of the fireplace, where they used to sit of an evening. Then he said a long goodbye to Mrs. Murgatroyd, who twined about his legs on the doorstep. Oh, come on, said Mr. M. We'll be back in a few hours. Don barked one enthusiastic bark from the back of the seat in the car. Harry pitied the innocence of dogs. He got in and slammed the car door like a prisoner slamming the door of his own cell. As they drove out, he said a silent goodbye to the goats and the chickens and the geese. "Lovely morning for a drive," said Mr. M. "Lucky I've got enough petrol. I get it for helping with the evacuees. I shouldn't be using it really, but you're going to be an evacuee soon, I suppose. My evacuee. Really, we've hardly got any time to sort things out before school starts. You'll need football kit," and he went on, making plans as they drove through the bright morning. Harry didn't listen. He was saying goodbye to his kingdom. The kingdom where Mr. M was king and he was prince. It was easy being a prince with Mr. M. You only had to be yourself and run and laugh and ask questions and help with everything, like the goats and the hens, and everything was a pleasure. He knew exactly what Mr. M wanted. They'd been lifting potatoes in the garden last night, Mr. M turning over the ground with a spade, and Harry filling in the loose soil for the exciting, small, round, smooth, cool shapes of the new potatoes. Then his hand had closed around something shriveled and large and soggy and yuck. He pulled it out with a squeak of horror and seen it was another potato. "That's the old man," said Mr. M. "That's the potato I planted in the spring. That plant grew out of. The old man dies, but he gives us all these new potatoes." And suddenly it was all clear in Harry's mind. The old man potato was the father, and the new potatoes were the sons. The life in the old man was passing on. "Chuck him back," said Mr. M. "His job's done. He's content." And suddenly Harry realized that Mr. M had been quite content to die in his own good time, when he'd passed on all the things he knew and all the sons he'd taught, and all the things he owned to his own son. But the new potato had died before the old man, in the blazing wreck of a battleship off the coast of Malaya, and turned Mr. M's whole world upside down, until Harry turned up, the new potato. He wanted nothing in the whole world except to be Mr. M's new potato, except Mr. M was ruining everything. The kingdom was behind them now, destroyed, gone forever. And now the car, running sweetly along, was rolling up the map of Harry's journey too. Holy Island had vanished behind, where he'd fought the gang and fought the tide and won. He passed the old lady's house, then saw in the distance, near the cliff, the upward-pointing barrels of Artie's anti-craft guns, and the pillbox where the RAF man had given him a watch, and even a thin trail of smoke emerging over the cliff edge that might have come from Joseph's chimney, and the chip shop at New Biggin, and the old boat he and Don had hidden under, the endless day after the fight with the farmer. They were coming to Blythe Ferry, and the place where Don had scared off the two men. It was all undone in less than an hour. All that sweat and pain and hope and despair. All the times he'd won, and all the times he'd lost. He'd done it. He'd done it all for nothing. The whole journey, the whole kingdom by the sea, was only a few minutes' drive in a car. The old familiar scenes began to close in around him, like prison warders. The haven in the chip shop at Tinmouth, And still Mr. M prattled on about arranging school dinners, and what class he might hope to be in at the Duke's school, and how he'd teach Harry to carve shepherd's crooks in the long winter evenings. "You'd better direct me from here," said Mr. M. "I'm quite lost now." "Oh, Mr. M, how right you are. But you don't know it." "Left," said Harry. "Left again. Right here." And then they were outside where his house had been. All there was left was the sagging garden gate and the few straggly bits of Dad's old privet hedge. Beyond, everything was flat, with weeds starting to grow among the bits of broken brick. It looked like nobody had ever lived there, where bits of Mum and Dad and Dulcie still down were bits of Mum and Dad and Dulcie still down there under the earth, or had they dug enough out? But had they dug enough out to be buried respectably in Preston Cemetery? He gave a great shudder. Even Mr. M noticed. He put his arm around Harry's shoulder. "Sorry, son, but you had to see it. You had to say goodbye properly. You couldn't go on running away forever. Now it's done. We can go." "Go," said Harry. "Go where?" "The warden's post, I think. They know what happened to people. They keep records." "First right, second left," said Harry, staring down at the clutch and the brakes and the pedals, with Mr. M's feet on them. He just felt sick. He just knew what was coming, and what was coming was utterly terrible. It hung over him like a thundercloud. The wardens were friendly and sympathetic. You could tell the raids had almost stopped for the summer, because the wardens weren't tired to death, or grey with seeing too many horrible things. There was almost a holiday atmosphere in the brick warden's post. 2 of them were sitting outside on small wooden chairs getting a suntan. The dartboard looked well used. The head warden got down a great thick grimy book, like a secretary's petty cash book at school. "What date was it roughly?" he said gently. Harry told him. The warden licked the end of his great thick calloused finger and turned the dog-eared pages. "Vaguely," he said, "vaguely. Man, woman, and child." Then he said, "Hello, that's funny. They're down here being dead, but then their names have been crossed out again. Hey, Bill, you know anything about this?" Bill came and looked, but he didn't know anything either. The third man, Tommy, didn't know anymore, except that the crossings out were official. Maybe they were dug out alive after all. By the heavy rescue. The heavy rescue might know. They're in Prudhoe Street. You should record audiobooks. I think that would be marginal success. I would need to practice a lot, but I do appreciate the thought. Thank you. Prudhoe Street. Where are we going? Somehow Harry got back into the car. He knew they hadn't been dug out alive from the heap of blazing rubble he'd left. It was all a balls up, a cruel, crazy balls up. He didn't even get out of the car when they got to Prudhoe Street. He left it to Mr. M. Mr. M came back after a very long time. He got in and said in a low voice, "They dug down through your house. They found nothing." "Maybe they were all burned up." The man assured me that they would have found something. They always find something. Harry had an awful vision of the chicken that Mam had forgotten about once. Man had forgotten about one over Merry New Year's Day. Ugh. Beans. And left far too long in the oven. He nearly threw up there and then. They suggest we try the hospital, said Mr. M, very low and gentle. They said they'd know at the hospital. The mortuary's there too. Mr. M was gone a long time at the hospital. Harry stared at the nurses passing in their starched uniforms. They just didn't seem to mean anything. He stroked Don's ear. That helped a bit. Then Mr. M came back and his voice was all weird. They were here, he said, all three of them. William Bagley, Mary Bagley, and Dulcie Margaret Bagley. In the children's ward. I've seen their records. Those were their names, weren't they? Yes, said Harry. Those are their names. They were all quite badly hurt. Your dad had a broken leg and your mum crushed ribs, and Dulcie had a lot of cuts from glass. They all had lots of cuts from flying glass. But they've gone. Dulcie was the last. She was discharged a month ago. But, said Harry, but... He didn't believe a word of it. This was all just bits of writing on paper. He'd seen the house burning with its evil blue flames. Town hall, said Mr. M briskly. The town hall will know what happened to them. They told me how to get to the town hall. It was as well they had. Harry could never have told him. At the town hall, Mr. M was much quicker. They've been rehoused. Number 11 Cheshunt Road, on the Ridges estate. You know it. That proved it was a lie. Mum and Dad would never go and live in the Ridges. The Ridges was where the slummy people lived. Mum and Dad would have died before they would go and live in the Ridges. But Mr. M was off again, driving like mad, full of excitement. The excitement of the chase. Harry stared dully out of the windscreen as the jungle-like front gardens and broken fences of the Ridges closed in around him. People on the Ridges smashed up their front fences for firewood. It was all a dream, a terrible, mistaken nightmare. It must be 3 other people pretending to be his family on the Ridges for some criminal reason. Half the people on the Ridges had been in prison for nicking and all that. Number 11, said Mr. M. Come on. He had to nearly drag Harry out of the car. They walked with Don up the cracked, ugly front path, past a garden full of weeds. His dad would never have had a garden full of weeds. Mr. M knocked. There was the sound of footsteps coming. The front door opened slowly. Dad was standing there. He was leaning on a stick, and he had terrible scars on his face and bare arms. He didn't look at all well, and he had on a very baggy and awful pair of old trousers, but it was Dad. He looked at Mr. M inquiringly, then looked down and saw Harry. You little bugger, he said angrily. Where have you been? You've had us worried out of our minds. Mum had burst into tears and hugged him, then made a cup of tea in some very crude and ugly cups. Then they all sat around except Dulcie, who stood by Mum's chair for a cuddle, with her thumb in her mouth, and listened with eyes like saucers. We was running down the garden to the shelter, said Dad. Then the bomb hit. It must have blown us clear into next door's garden and knocked us senseless. First thing we remember was waking up in the hospital. But Jack Brightman, the warden, came to see us. They found us in Simpson's garden, number 7. So they just thought we were the Simpsons and got an ambulance and got us into a hospital. What about the Simpsons? Asked Harry. They were away on holiday. It was Smith's Dock holiday week. Sorry, mouth not working. Now at last Harry remembered the warden that terrible night saying that the Simpsons were safe in hospital. Remembered thinking there was something funny about the Simpsons being at home at all, but not being able to work it out. I think Harry might have been slightly concussed at the time, so there's that. No, he wasn't concussed, he was just deeply traumatized. Never mind. I thought he hit his head or something, but that was incorrect. The warden said you were dead, said Harry, so I just went away. Ran away, said Harry, said Dad, his voice full of disgust. A big lad like you, running away? Running away, said Ma'am. I've cried myself to sleep every night worrying what had happened to you. Running away, said Dulcie. And you weren't even scratched. You were in the shelter. Cowardly, cowardly custard. She snuggled tighter into Mum's arm, like she owned her. The scars on her face didn't make her look any prettier, and her dress was grubby. Suddenly, Harry really hated her. Her always running to Mum, telling tales, and always sucking up to be Dad's little pet. Mum, said Dulcie, I'm frightened of that big dog. He's staring at me. He wants to bite me. She started to snuffle a bit, like she always had. That's my dog, yelled Harry. Don was just sitting there, peacefully with his tongue out because he was thirsty. Your dog, said Dad in an awful voice. What makes it your dog? I found him. He was my only friend. He was the only friend I had. Well, you can just bloody well lose him again, shouted Dad. You're not bringing a great dog like that here. We can hardly feed ourselves, let alone a great humping dog like that. Harry looked at Don, at that faithful face that had gone through so much with him, and Don looked back at Harry, as ever, his great brown eyes warm with adoration. He'll have to be put to sleep, said Dad, with great finality. You'll never find the owner now, you bloody little fool. Fancy picking up a great hungry animal like that. Have you got no sense? It was too much. On the one side there was Don, and in the open air, and the great winding sunlit coast of Northumberland, his whole kingdom that he'd found for himself, made for himself, and on the other side, these shabby, angry, bossy people with their disgusting Ridge's house, full of whining self-pity for what they had suffered. Narrow, narrow. He stood up and said, If Don goes, I go. Go where? Gasped Mum, turning very pale, clutching her neck. What does he mean, Dad? Go? Dad glared at Harry, and Harry glared at Dad. There was a long, long silence in which an awful lot was said. Harry and Dad would never be quite the same ever again. Oh, some things would get better, no doubt. Dad would get back to work when his leg was better. Dad was a good worker and made good money, and they wouldn't stay long on the ridges, but Dad had never seen a gannet dive. He'd never seen dawn come up over the breaking waves of Drew Ridge Bay. He would never understand. None of them would ever understand, not even Mum. Harry had grown, and they hadn't. Harry had grown too big for his family. As if he'd drunk from the same magic bottle like Alice in Wonderland, as Dad knew it, and hated it. And Dad knew it, and hated it. It was Mr. Rem who broke it up, gently. I'd be glad to look after the dog for you, he said. He'll be company for me. Right, that's settled then, said Dad. I'm beholden to you. and for bringing this young fool home." But he didn't sound beholden. He didn't sound grateful. He sounded pretty angry underneath. Mr. M knew. Mr. M got up to go. His shoulders dropped a bit, but his face was very kind. "I'll see you to the car," said Harry, glaring at his family, daring them to try and stop him. They went out to the car. The car was still waiting to take them back to the glorious kingdom. Don got cheerfully onto the back seat, but looked puzzled when Harry didn't get in. Mr. M got into the driver's seat and wound down the window and sat staring into space. "I told you," said Harry. I told you we shouldn't have come back." Mr. M looked up at him amazed. "I want to stay with you," said Harry. It was the truth. Mr. M's face lit up a little through the bleakness. "I'll write and let you know how the dog gets on," he said. "All right, every week," said Harry. "Twice a week." "Steady on," said Mr. M. "Once a month will do. Don't make your father jealous. He's a good man, really. He's been through a lot. So have you." "I shall get over it," said Mr. M. "Thanks to you and Don here. We'll look after each other. I think we'll manage." And Harry thought he might, but he added, I'll come and see you both as often as I can. I'll hitchhike in the holidays, like the soldiers do when they go on leave." "You're welcome, if you can manage it. Go steady, though. Don't make trouble for yourself." "I'm nearly 13. I'll be able to do what I like." "None of us can ever do that," said Mr. M warningly. "Not even when we're grown up." Then he said, "Cheerio," with a tremble on his lips, and put the car into gear and drove away. Pardon me, I keep hiccuping. Excuse me. As they turned out of the road, Harry caught the last glimpse of Don's face, peering at him through the back of the window. Then he went back inside. He paused in the hall, hearing Dulcie's voice. "Who was that man? I didn't like him. I didn't like that dog." "Funny sort of fella." "Funny sort of fella," said Mum. "He talked very posh. Not our sort. Not our sort at all." "I wonder if he's married," said Dad. "Or if he's one of that sort." Harry walked in. "He was married," he said. "But his wife died, and his son was killed on board the Repulse of Malaya. That shut them up." But he stared at their faces and wondered how he was going to keep his own mouth shut over all the years. The years before he got back to his kingdom by the sea. 13. You're a man at 13. I hope you know that. And that's it. That's the end. We're done here. It's gone. We're finished. It was a nice ending, sort of. It was a very bittersweet ending. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. I'll have to give this to my mom to read, actually. It was really good. Oh God. I've just remembered. I did like it. I liked it a lot. It's not usually the sort of thing that I read, but, you know, it's nice. It's nice to expand one's sort of horizons, really. To be honest, I don't, as much as I like books and reading, I don't do nearly enough reading. And I spent so long writing, I neglected to read literally anything for several years. Or anything really substantial anyway. Like maybe the occasional fanfic, but actually I still have loads of chapters to read from things that I usually keep on top of. But yeah, I will let you guys know on Monday what the selection will be. I really did enjoy it. Thank you, Chopper, so much for the new book. It was a joy to read, and it was sad. it was sad, but it was beautiful. I've said it before, but I love the language, and I love the way that it just sort of comes out on the page. It's a simple to read. It's simple to read, but it's very emotive and very there's really strong imagery at points. Particularly the thing about the potato towards the end. That was a time. I never thought I'd get emotional over a potato, but there you go. It happens sometimes, I suppose. But yeah, I will let you know. Minley, come here. Look who it is. Look who it be. Where's my pudding? Sorry. I thought I'd just... She was there, and she was just sitting. And she's been super clingy. What game are you gonna... Well, we're on Monday, we're playing Final Fantasy VIII. So that's going to be the same. I'm going to switch around a few things, and then I will let you know further plans on Monday if they change. I'm not playing Ori and the Blind Forest. Not for some time. I don't think I have the emotional capacity to deal with Ori and the Blind Forest right now. As I said before, I'm putting that on the back burner for now. And maybe we'll go back to it one day, but today is not that day. But yeah, we had to cut a game anyway, and I feel like rage quitting is as good a time as any to do it. But thank you so much for coming to story time and spending time with me and listening to me. And I'm glad you guys could spend time and chatting with each other. There's no shame. See, this is why I stream, so I can finish games that I really like, because I am definitely one of those people that just like, oh, I've got really far, I've progressed so much, and then I just put the game down and never go back to it again. Definitely one of those people. But yes, streaming is great because it forces you to finish games. If you want to, that is. Like, I do like having company while I game. It's always a pleasure, and I love your guys' input every single time. It's a joy to speak to you. And I have missed you this week, by the way. I felt awful that I haven't been able to stream, mostly because of my migraines and then family visits, and it's kind of just rude to stream in the middle of a family visit, especially when you're all in tight quarters, basically. And it's just rude. So I couldn't stream when my brother was visiting, which I think is fair enough. Oh, pardon me. Whew. But I can't believe you remembered his username. But cool. Cool, great. But yes, whatever game we finish next, after that we're going to be playing Monkey Island. What is that? That looks like a very confused caterpillar, I'll be honest with you. Oh, speaking of confused caterpillars, I spoke to my friend who did the emotes for the channel, the unique bits emotes, and I don't know when. Oh, it's a zucchini. Okay. But yeah, I don't know when, but I spoke to my friend about commissioning a particular emote that you guys were joking about the other day. Um, it's the nye. We're going nye. I'm getting a nye emote, and it's going to be an animated emote too. Not dissimilar to Chopper's grump emote that he just sent there. Grump? Did I say grunt? I meant grump. Grumpy wolf. There you go. It's the book. But yeah. So there may or may I don't as I say there. I hope soon there will be a new emote on the page for you guys. But I again make no promises because it is it's not the book. It's not the book. It's the nyeh noise. It's the nyeh noise. The book is a bit more of a complicated idea that I would have to go through a little bit later on. But the book is definitely a possibility for the future. It depends on whether I remember it. But no, it's the other one. I apologize. Yeah, so that's life sucks now. I apologize. I'm so sorry. I ruined your day. or in fact your entire life. Yeah. So listen, I'm gonna leave you guys here for now. Thank you so much for coming. I do. I hope you guys have a good sleep as well. You know, and a nice evening / morning. And I will see you on Monday, fresh and good and everything. Thank you for being here, Starbreeze. So listen, thank you for being here. Sleep well when you go. If it is not your bedtime, have a great time zone. And I will see you guys on Monday for some Final Fantasy VIII. If not before then, Starbreeze, you were given a gift sub, which means you have access to the Discord server. So drop in whenever you feel like, because we're always open for chats, even though we're actually quite a quiet server. But, you know, we drop memes. It's cool. Stay shiny. Good night, guys. I will see you around. Bye-bye.